All right. All right. To start with, I have this very good design principle that I follow personally, and it's quoted by one of the famous architects from the 20th century. And I, being personally from architect background, I follow this in my current design field as well. And then it states that form follow function. If you have to break that down and understand what it actually means, it states that the shape of a building or object or an object or a product itself that we design should primarily relate to its intended function or purpose only, which means that if you have the function in place, the shape of the product will follow itself. I'm Probin, and I am a UX and UI designer at GeekyAnts. I'm also creating this, working on a very cool project for Meetup base. We're creating a design system, and we will be talking about atomic methodology today. Everything that revolves around atomic methodology and how we do it at GeekyAnts and Native Base. We'll also be talking about why atomic design is a good idea, and we'll be walking through the native base project, which is our Figma file. And I'm sure people will like it because this is something internal that we do. So stick around and see what it actually is. Now, to start off, we have a simple page. You might be wondering why I am showing you this page. It's basically a page from the time where the web was actually created, right? Around the 1990s. And Amazon was one of the first brand to being onboarded on a web platform. And if you look at this page, there was no design in particular as such. There's only like text, a plain text, or links, and then few pictures and shapes. But this doesn't add up to being a designer or having a design role in general. So as the time passed by, when the whole industry realized that they need designer, we were brought up to this design tools, which is Photoshop and Illustrator. And but the problem with these tools were the accuracy, because these tools will primarily made only for editing photos or making illustrations. We had to adopt, designers had to adopt a very quick phase that we got to work on only these tools. And these tools had a problem of accuracy, which means that anything that we design were not actually used by developers. They will actually look at a JPEG file or a PNG file, and they'll try to replicate it from Photoshop and develop it. But then later, when we look at the product itself, towards the end, when it's developed, we'll see that, oh, this is not how we wanted it to look like. So there's a problem of accuracy. This is when companies like this companies like old ones, Amazon and thing, they have tried creating uh, the websites like this, but then they were having lots of problem with colors. If you look at the color palette here, we have like shades of green, and the green were actually like three of them, which we did not want it at first place, right? So this was a problem. And this problem was later quick solved by having a style guide. The companies actually started using style guide, but this was restricted only to having it for your font or colors only, right? And then the another problem was the scalability. If you look at Photoshop, or if anyone is working on Photoshop, they'll have very less time, or they'll spend up using so much time using creating a single screen. And at this fast pace, which we want it to be, with the latest is when the apps have started developing like hundred of screen in their product, scalability was the problem. Later on, moving ahead of the time, there were products like SketchUp, Figma, and Adobe XD. This actually started making the interfaces been working easy. But the problem arises when we have like hundreds of screen now on responsive, including responsive devices. And then we have multiple designers working on the same project. And it's hard for everyone, to follow the same design. We spend up using so much time establishing standards and then quality checking everybody's work so that everybody is on the same page. That's when design pattern came in. Design pattern is where you use a certain elements from the page, and then if it's reusable, you just make it a pattern and then keep it. And companies actually started following design patterns, but the problem was that even if you want to have a style guide into it, even if you want to change something in that design pattern, you'll actually have to rework on the whole thing, which means that the element inside a design pattern, if it's an icon or a text, you'll actually have to work on the whole thing and not that particular pattern itself. So how do we get them together? How do we get them together to solve it? This is when design system come into place. Basically, design system is a building block to create a structure of the product. While there are numerous things which we should consider while building a design system, there's also a series of components that can be reused in different combinations. And then this makes so much sense. And this is where style guide stops, or it borders itself from a design system. In style guide, a designer would use the same basic element over and over again, consuming so much time. But today in design system, we can do that easily by just using the same component and having everything um, got out from its library. Well, design system itself is not a rule, but it's a way of solving problem. And atomic design is a way of creating or building a design system. So what actually does an atomic design mean? Atomic design was initially created by Brad Frost. He got inspired by the real world living, where an atoms create together to create another component or another building blocks. And atom is the basic layer of it. So if you see here, we have hydrogen and oxygen, which is the basic block of all the matter, which combines together to create a molecule, and then it further moves up the hierarchy to create even more complex organisms or a form itself. Right? This was the whole concept of having an atomic design. But what does it actually mean in an interface design? What does it mean in our language? Brad Frost, the creator of atomic design, described it as atomic design as a methodology composed of 5 different stages working together to create an interface system in a more hierarchical manner. Right? So design system actually have 5 different stages, which has been broken down. And these 5 design elements are atoms, molecule, organism, templates, and pages. Well, this was initially created around 2011 or 12. Bradford later revised it, and then he added another elements to it, which is subatom. Now, to go through each of them, we'll try to understand what they consist of. To start off with subatom, we have the very basic elements of the whole design. We have colors, we have typography, we can have shadows, we can have spacing, and all the subatoms cannot be singly used in any page to create the whole product. It has to form together. The subatoms have to form together to create an atom. Atom, now if you look at it, it actually makes sense because it's taking a form now. We have things like the label, the icons, the button, and the text label, text field itself, right? But then if you look at this, if you just try to place this anyway, it wouldn't make sense because it has function, but then you just can't use it alone by itself. So we add this up to having a molecule. We add atoms and subatoms together, or even atoms and atoms together to create a molecule. And molecule can now have a better form. It can consist of a text field, a button, and an icon together to give it a more functionality. And now you could either place molecules anywhere on the page to make it more functional, or you can create molecules with another molecule to create an organism. Or an organism can also consist of having a molecule and an atom together to create a more give it a better form. This organisms is also known as design pattern, and design pattern can be used just pulled out and used anywhere on the page, like how we have seen with the BBC earlier. And we have on the higher hierarchy, we have templates and pages. Well, both of them fall in the same category. Just that templates are something which is not a final product. Basically, it contains just the layout and how the form will take place, but then it wouldn't have any content in it or any real form in it. And the last stage is the page. So pages are something where we have everything on place by using all the subatoms and the atomic design. Creating a design system or creating a design system with this methodology is not a linear process, by which I mean that you just can't go in the process right from the beginning. You say you want to create a page, you just can't start from the beginning with an atom and then think that, oh, if you go in a process, you'll reach to a conclusion where you have a page, right? But then what if you don't want that page to look like at that form in the first place? Then again you'll have to go back again and then recreate it, and again it'll start falling the same way, and that's not a practical way of doing it. Another problem with this is that as a designer, will be blocked at certain point, thinking that, oh, this is how we do it, and then we'll restrict ourselves to having this creative thing happening. So what we do in our team is that we actually start with page, which is the highest hierarchy, where we try to lay out everything in a proper format, try to fit in the buttons, try to fit in the text fields or whatever components are required, and then go back to each subatomic level, and then standardize it from there. Say suppose if you want a button to look like a brand color, we'll try to put that on our page, and our page will have better understanding of how it will look like, and it makes more sense that way, right? And I would also want to talk about why atomic design is a good idea if you want to adopt it. Is because nowadays everyone in the industry has started following atomic design in general, and not only atomic design, but as a design system who wants to adopt having it in the company, atomic design is the best way of doing it. Firstly, because it reduces the amount of rework that a developer or a designer has to do. Basically, a designer or developer, if they want to do something, even before adopting the atomic methodology, they'll actually create each of these components one by one, and then not reuse it. But if we have this, we don't have to rework it again. We can just pull it out from one of the library and form it together with the other sub elements. It's also easy for designers to design and manage the file very effectively. Also, by breaking it down in the whole process into atoms, molecule, and organism, sharing and updating the file in the future becomes hassle-free. It also helps in documenting the whole design component in a very clear way, which ultimately helps the team collaborate in a better. And then we can also focus on the other complexities. Right? Um, I'll also like to walk you through the native-based design system which we are creating. Well, if you look at the layout here, we have subatoms, we have atoms, we have molecules, we have organism and pages. But for a native base, we are restricted to using only till organism because we are a product creating for the product, right? So pages is the ultimate goal which a user will want to look like. But we are someone who just creates this till organism to make life easier for the other uh, companies or brands to create their pages. Right. To start with subatoms, we have colors where we have streamlined everything properly. We have primary colors, then we have alert colors, then we have other colors that we could use on our design system. Now, what will happen if you have this kind of system is that you not get confused with the number of colors which is available, like we have seen in the early point, where we have set of different greens, and then where we were using hex code, and then trying to figure out which hex code to use at what point. But if we have this thing in a streamlined way, we know what to use at what point. Then we have other things in subatoms like the text, the headers. Then we have shadows. Then we have border radius, spacings, and icons. And just to let you know that all the subatoms are basically the foundation of the design file that we maintain. And all of these elements goes in the style panel here. We have text style, we have color style, then we have shadows, and then we have the spacing, which can be just pulled out from here and then used out throughout the design. Right? And then if we go to atom level, we have things like button, which is again made up of two different subatoms. We had icons and text used from there. We created this atom here at this level, and then we have different variations of atom depending on the function that we wanted. This is just the button. Then we have switches like this. Then we have labels like this. Then we have dividers and all this thing. Right now, if you go to molecule level, molecules are basically made up of components which we have on atom and subatoms. Then there we have text field where we have used the text label, and then this is something that came up from atoms. So we have combined them together to create a full-fledged functional component now, right? And this again, depending on the states, we have designed everything in a format. You'll see in different sizes, and everything is in component form. So it can be just pulled out from here and then used throughout your design. Then we have checkboxes, select drop down, then form control text areas. Well, this is just an example of how and what it actually looks like on our design file. We actually go through much more processes than just this. Then we have organisms, which itself, if you want to place it anywhere on the screen, it sounds usable now. So suppose for this edit box, you can just put it as a layover on a page and then it's functional. Same with the alerts. Then we have popovers where we have used atoms. You can see button as something which is coming from atom level and then put it up on this level here and so on. Now, what I was talking about having not a linear process where we design the page in not linear is by having few samples like this. What we do is we create few samples where we have everything placed together. We have text field, then we have buttons, and this is where we decide on what or how we actually want our atoms or molecules to look like. Now, once we have this set, we go back to every single pages or every single elements and then change it from there. Right? It's also very easy to have it in this format because if I want to change something from subatomic level, it should reflect everything on the other components. So suppose I want to change the primary color. This is the primary color palette that we have. So suppose if I want to change the primary color palette to say green, so I'll just copy any text code and then I'll go to the color palette here and I'll just change it from here. Right? Once it's changed, it will show change on all of my components here in every level. So we have changed it to green now. It's showing green. If we have used any component molecules, we'll change it there as well. So we have green color now instead of blue. This is blue was earlier. Now we have green color in here. And then it also changes in this particular section of the atomic level. So it changes on this one and ultimately on the page, right? Because we have used this on the page. So this is how atomic methodology works, that everything is interlinked and interconnected to each other. Now, I'll just give you a tip on how, or a very simple small tip actually on how you can maintain this is by creating everything a component, even the smallest of the smallest element. Suppose this thing is an if this was not a component, it would be very hard for me to change it or use it from the library. If I have this, I can just go to library and then search for other items that's available. And because everything is a component, I can just use one from that. It just changes directly. So this is how it's easy to maintain things and then to keep track of things as well. And everything, because everything is in a proper format, you know where to go and then what to pull out from where and just use it. Yeah, that's it from my time, and it's been great.